All right, so today's Morning Pit's going to be something of a companion piece to tomorrow's Morning Pit, and today's is better than tomorrow's. Today, quality-wise, I hope they're all great. I hope one isn't decidedly better than the other, but one is a little bit more positive than the other because right now Pitt's at the midpoint of the season. They're 6-0, 6 games down, 6 games left to play in the regular season at least. We know there'll be at least one postseason game on account of winning 6 and getting that old bowl eligibility belt back. But at this, point in the season, it is a midpoint in the season. And it is, I don't want to say it's like a turning point or something like that, but this is a big point in the season for Pitt. 6 games down, 6 games left to go. A huge game on Thursday night. And quite frankly, every one of these games is huge. Every one of these games has its challenges. Syracuse, obviously a great offense. Actually, a friend of mine pointed this out that Pitt faced so many really good and even great running backs in the first 6 games, most of them at least. And then these final 6 are largely dominated by the quarterbacks. Kyle McCord at Syracuse, Calandry at Virginia, Cade Klubnik. How many times? I am going to do that a million times. Cade Klubnik at Clemson. Obviously, Jennings at SMU. Castellanos, I still think he's really good at Boston College. I know he maybe didn't look his best over the weekend, but I still think he's a dangerous player. Anyway, I digress. Huge games coming up. All 6 of these games are huge. Every one is going to be a challenge in its own unique way. And I think Pitt fans, you're sort of got this. You've got this extra layoff here before the Syracuse game to kind of stew about your team. And you might be stewing on the positive side and think about all the things that are going to help them win a bunch of games. And you might be stewing on the negative side, thinking about all the things that are going to cost them the next 6 games. My guess is if you are there's 2 factors really that lead me to this guess. One is that you're a Pitt fan, and 2 is that the most recent game was the Cal game where the offense played its worst game. But my guess is you're thinking more about the things that are going to sink this team in the next 6 games. Pitt, without its high-powered offense, looked very vulnerable as they've looked all season. Certainly the Cal game wasn't their first one-score game of the year. But they looked the weakest they've looked, largely because of their offense and their offense falling apart and having its worst game. And so when you take a team's strength and make it look weak, that's going to raise some questions about what you think that team's prospects are for the remainder of its games. And so understandably so. Well, today we're going to try and reverse that course. We're going to spend today talking about the things that can go right for Pitt, the reasons to be optimistic about Pitt heading into these final 6 games, both sides of the ball, all 3 phases. Why not? Things that are that should give you some reason to believe that Pitt can have some success over these final 6 games. We could have another conversation, and maybe we will on Wednesday or maybe tomorrow, on tomorrow or Thursday. We can have a conversation about what constitutes success in these final 6 games. That's always a fun one to have, but we should have that conversation before the Syracuse game, just so we're on the record. But if you want to have a successful 6-game stretch, what do they need to do? And more to the point for you and your own sanity and your well-being, what reasons are there to feel optimistic about what Pitt can do in these final 6 games? So that's what today's going to be. Tomorrow, it's going to be kind of on the other side, talking about reasons that they won't be successful in these final 6 games, why they might only win 2 or 3. Actually, I shouldn't say it like that because, again, we haven't gotten into our conversation about what constitutes success, right? But tomorrow we'll talk about some of the things that could be a real problem for this team. That could sink this team, and kind of waste a lot of the promise they showed in the first 6 games. But today we're going to be on the optimistic side. Today we're going to talk about things that can go right for this team. Today we're going to talk about reasons you can believe in this team taking care of business in its final 6 games and building on the success they've had thus far and turning it into even more success, which would be pretty cool if they could do that, right? Because you'd start dealing with some territories they haven't been in a long time. But reasons to be optimistic, reasons to think they can win games, positive things about this team, this Pitt football team heading into the second half of the season, a crucial stretch of games. Let's stay positive here on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, it's the Tuesday edition of the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Your Panthers are still 6-0. What can they do to keep that O in the column over there? I don't know if O has a gesture, does it? No, it doesn't look like anything's going to happen there. I don't know. They surprised me with the thumbs up and the peace signs and the confetti and the rainbows there's no rainbows, but the confetti and the balloons and the fireworks and laser shows. I was curious if they had anything else I hadn't discovered yet. But how are they going to keep that 0 in the loss column, and how far can they keep it, or what reason should you have to believe that they can keep the 0 in the loss column going forward, starting with Syracuse on Thursday night? So I was trying to dig in, got the legal pad out. I know our friend Panther for Life loves that. Got the legal pad out and tried to dig into some stats and reasons to be optimistic, some things that have obviously worked. And some of these are kind of obvious. Some of them are just digging into a few of the numbers. Look, I don't think there's any question that the biggest thing Pitt has to do on Thursday night is the offense has to bounce back. The defense is going to have a challenge. Kyle McCord throwing for 1 billion yards so far. He's got good receivers. He's got a good tight end. They have a good offense, and they're putting up tons of points and yards and going up and down the field. They're really good. It looks like Kyle McCord might be what he was cracked up to be prior to getting to Ohio State, what he seemed to not be when he was at Ohio State, and what he's back to being now that he's at Syracuse. So this game might be a shootout. Hopefully not 76-61, because we will all be at the stadium until 2 a.m. if that happens. But this game might be a bit of a shootout with some real points getting scored between both of these teams and some back and forth action. Now, for 5 games, we saw an offense out of Pitt that I think we were all optimistic and we all believed could play in that kind of game and win in that kind of environment in a shootout. For the first time since, obviously 2021, and before that, maybe 2016, were the only real offenses under Narduzzi that could win a shootout. A game where really just offenses are controlling the game and putting up tons of points and dictating what happens. 2018, to some extent, could probably have kind of operated in that environment, but if only because even if the other team scored, Pitt's offense was pretty good at scoring. They could sit on the ball for a long time. They could eat a lot of clock on their possessions, and so I think they might have been they might have been able to survive in that kind of game. But I think this year's offense, at least through the first 5 games, looked like they could play that kind of game, looked like they could win that kind of game. Now, obviously, the Cal game did not look that way. Syracuse's defense is not going to present the challenges that Cal's defense did. That doesn't mean they're pushovers. And, certainly I think a lot of Pitt's issues in the Cal game were self-inflicted. And maybe that's a good place to start as far as reasons for optimism about this offense. I don't think Cal cracked some kind of code or solved some kind of puzzle in Cade Bell's offense. I don't think that was the case. I really don't. I really think that there were a combination of factors, or there was a combination of factors that went into Pitt's offense only scoring 17 points in that game. The Pitt's offense having its worst game of the season. I think a lot of those factors were in Eli Holstein's decision-making. And this is not a criticism of him. It's a critique of some of his play in that game in particular. But I've said this a number of times since last Saturday, or 2 Saturdays ago or whenever that game was, that I really feel like Eli Holstein was looking for home runs when he really could have settled for solid contact singles, and just move the runners over, and just keep digging away, because those plays are there in this offense. Those plays are open in this offense. And Holstein did a great job through the first 5 games, I think, mixing and matching the dink and dunk, the chipping away with those shots downfield where he gave his receivers a chance to make plays. There was that pass early in the North Carolina game, just a deep shot down the left side to Kanate Mumfield, and he caught it. It was like a 43-yard pass or 40-something yard pass. And I remember commenting, and I think he tweeted at the time that, that's the kind of pass that shows just trust in the receivers. Eli Holstein believed his receiver would go up and make that play, or go down and make that play. It's not like it's not like Mumfield out-jumped the defensive back, but he believed that Mumfield would make that play, and so he took the shot to him. And that's good. You have to be able to do that. You have to have that confidence in your playmakers. Your playmakers have to earn that confidence, which I think Pitts have. And it's good to be willing to take those shots, but you can't over-rely on those shots. And I think to some extent, Eli Holstein did. Now, I haven't looked at the raw numbers of how many passes he attempted 20 yards downfield or this or that, but, and I mean, I probably could bring those up on Pro Football Focus, and some might even contend that I should have had these things ready and available. I don't think it was a matter that I don't know if he did it a lot more, took those deeper passes a lot more than he did in previous games, but I think what didn't exist is that there wasn't that counterbalance with the shorter passes. You know, he wasn't offsetting those with chipping away. And I think that's what he did really well in the first 5 games. He was willing to take what the defense gave him and then mix in the deep shots. And I don't think he really did a great job of that part of taking what the defense gave him, because you can't stop everything, right? You can't stop everything in a passing game. The numbers don't work out. And so Cal was not taking everything away. They were taking certain things away. And I don't think Holstein, and maybe Cade Bell to a certain extent, and I mean, we can mix him in here because it's ultimately his responsibility to get that offense in the position it's supposed to be and have those conversations with Eli Holstein about, okay, we need to do this and we need to do that. And so it's really both of them, and you know, it can extend out to the rest of the offense and the staff and the players. But I don't think they adjusted well enough to what Cal was giving them. And I don't think they took what Cal was giving them. If a defense is going to give you something, take it. And keep taking it and make them pay for giving that to you. Because here's the other thing. Pitt has playmakers on offense. Yeah, I've completely reversed course of where I stood over the summer in my opinion about this receiving core, my opinion about Desmond Reed as he pops up on the screen there. Like, it's not that I thought they were bad players, but I really didn't know what their ceiling was in terms of playmaking ability. I think we've seen these are playmakers. If you get them the ball, good things will happen. If you get the ball to Mumfield, Lee, Williams, Johnson, Reed, even Dejon Reynolds, good things will happen. You got to get the ball to them. You know, and so if teams are giving you that underneath stuff, if they're giving you the flats, if they're giving you shorter passes or things like that, take them and then make them pay for it. And once they pay for it, they're going to have to adjust, and then you're going to have some of those opportunities downfield that you want. Long-winded way, and this wasn't even one of my points on the legal pad, but it's a long-winded way of saying you've got to take what the defense gives you. And I bring that up and I emphasize the point as much as I am because I believe that's a correctable issue. You know, it's not something that they're never going to get better at. They absolutely can get better at it. They should get better at it, and I think they will get better at it, of taking what's available there. And so that's number one. Before we get into anything else, that's number one, is Eli Holstein has to take what's there. And Cade Bell has to get a good feel for what the defenses are doing and give Holstein more options of taking advantage of it. And I think they did a really good job of that through the first 5 games. Not so much against Cal. Chance to bounce back on Thursday night. Eli Holstein, 14 red zone touchdowns so far this season, 11 passing, 3 rushing. The team has scored 19 touchdowns from the red zone. So obviously Eli Holstein involved with 14 out of those 19, which I think is a pretty good number. But the other thing that was missing from the Cal game, and here's the first thing that I think should make you feel a little bit optimistic going forward, and a lot of people have brought this up, is Eli Holstein using his legs. And to some extent, Pat Narduzzi said he thought that Cal did a good job clogging up the running lanes and sort of preventing Eli Holstein from doing some of the things he had done. But check out where Eli Holstein ranks, according to Pro Football Focus, among ACC quarterbacks. Now, I'm not going to give the raw numbers. I'm just going to give the rankings because Pro Football Focus has a weird way of calculating quarterback rushing stats. I think they take out most of the sacks to just kind of give a pure rushing number. Either it's scrambles or it's designed rushing attempts. So we take that into consideration. But even if maybe their math is a little funky, you still end up with guys ranked, and they're all ranked according to the same math. So even if it might be 300 yards and it should be 320 or it should be 280, whatever it is, they're all being put on the same scale, so to speak. And by that scale, Eli Holstein is 3rd among ACC quarterbacks in rushing yards this season. He's 6th among ACC quarterbacks in rushing touchdowns. 2nd among ACC quarterbacks in yards per rushing attempt, second in yards after contact per attempt, second in runs by a quarterback of 10 yards or more. He's second in the conference. He's second in the conference in scramble yards, which is a bit of an indictment on Pitt's pass protection, but a credit to Eli Holstein's ability to get out of the pocket and run and make things happen. He's third among ACC quarterbacks in rushing touchdowns. And actually, if you go quarterbacks and running backs, Eli Holstein is 15th in the conference in rushing touchdowns. Desmond Reed has one more. Or no, not rushing touchdowns. Excuse me. He's third in the ACC in rushing first downs. First downs gained by a quarterback on the ground. He's 15th among all quarterbacks and running backs in first downs gained. I thought that didn't add up, but yeah, first downs gained via the rush. 15th among all ACC quarterbacks and running backs in first downs gained on the ground. Rushing first downs. I think he has 19. Desmond Reed has 20. So for all that Eli Holstein is doing well throwing the ball, the run is such a big part of his arsenal, and it's a big part of how he attacks, and it's a big part of how he's been able to have success, and it's a big part of what has made him one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC so far this season. That element has to come back on Thursday night, and then the following Saturday, and then the Saturday after that, and 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 I think that takes us through the Boston College game, if my quick math in my head was right. He's got it, like, it has to be part of it. And I don't know about design runs, but particularly if the left side of the offensive line is getting replaced, which seems like a possibility, there could be extra protection issues in this game on Thursday night, which means Holstein needs to be ready to run. Now, his wide receivers, all right, let's look in the ACC for Pitt's wide receivers, okay? Sincere Lee and Kenny Johnson among receivers with, I think, 25 or 30 targets this season. I forget what I set the minimum number at, 20, I think, or 25. Sincere Lee and Kenny Johnson both are catching more than 70% of their targets. There are only 4 teams in the conference with 2 receivers catching better than 70% of their targets. Miami, Syracuse, Clemson, and Pitt. Kanate Mumfield is 4th among ACC receivers with 25 targets in yards per catch. Mumfield, Johnson, and Raphael Williams are all in. This is a very interesting stat. Kenny Johnson, Kanate Mumfield, and Raphael Williams are all among the top 11 in the ACC in average depth of target. No other team in the conference has more than one player in the top 11 of average depth of target. Now, this comes back a little bit to some of the deep shots that they're taking, but even though I said they need to take what the defense gives them, I like that this offense is willing to attack, and that's part of why some of those underneath things are going to be open is because you are willing to attack. You are willing to shoot downfield. You are willing to try to be aggressive and get vertical. 3 guys in the top 11 in average depth of target. Your 3 starting receivers, top 11 of average depth of target in the ACC. Nobody else has more than 1 in that top 11. That's remarkable to me. Really remarkable. Kenny Johnson, according to Pro Football Focus, is 4 for 4 on contested catch targets. So it's only 4 in 6 games. That's not a ton, but 4 for 4 is a pretty good ratio, I would think. And Raphael Williams is 4 for 5. So you've got guys who stretch the field. You like to take those deep shots, which is good. Again, while you're offsetting them with taking advantage of what the defense will give you. And you've got players who can, in the case of Johnson and Williams, make those contested catches. In the case of Kanate Mumfield, get a lot of yards per catch. You've got playmakers. Again, I've done a full 180 on this receiving core through the first 6 games, and I think they're a big reason to be optimistic about this offense bouncing back and being closer to what they were in the first 5 games than what they were against Cal. I continue to believe in Gavin Bartholomew, and I think a lot of Pitt fans have waned in their belief in Gavin Bartholomew, and that's understandable. It is. He just hasn't done much. But I'll say this. You look at tight ends in the ACC with at least 20 targets so far this season. Gavin Bartholomew has caught 81%. That's 3rd among tight ends with at least 20 targets this season. He's also running a route 94% of the time on passing plays. He's not being kept into block. He's not, being used as a decoy or something like that. He's running a route. When they do a pass play, 94% of the time, Gavin Bartholomew is running a route. So the opportunities are there. And I bring this up if only to say that I think this offense can do even more. I think they've got even more opportunities for success. And when we talk about taking what the defense is giving you, and you've got, Johnson, Mumfield, and Williams all streaking downfield because they're top 11 in the ACC in average depth of target, and those guys are, Mumfield is 4th in the conference in yards per catch, and, Williams and Johnson are combined 8 of 9 on contested catches. You've got all these receiving targets you've got to watch. Oh, not to mention Desmond Reed, the only guy in the country with 400 rushing and 300 receiving yards. You got all these things to watch. Well, Gavin Bartholomew is there for you. Does he need to be your number one target in the offense? No. But when he's running a pass route 94% of the time, he's out there. And they can't cover all of them. They can't. The numbers just don't add up. Unless they drop 11, they can't cover everyone. And so when they're emphasizing taking away Kenny Johnson, when they're watching Kenate Mumfield, when they're being very close on Raphael Williams, when they are not ever losing sight of Desmond Reed, which it has to be the case at this point, that you always know where Reed is. When they're doing all of those things, those are 4 guys to keep an eye on. Gavin Bartholomew's out there. And he's an option. And he's available. And he catches 81% of his passes. 81% of his targets, I should say. Again, he's not your number one guy. He's not going to command 12 targets per game. And I'm not saying you use him like a Brock Bowers or something like that, or Dalton Kincaid or anything like that. But when you need to move the ball down the field, that guy is going to be there. And the options are going to be, he is going to be a viable option all the time. All the time. So again, I say that just as a way to say that there's more that can happen in this offense. This offense can continue to blossom. And one of the ways is by hitting those passes to Gavin Bartholomew, getting 7 yards, 9 yards, 13 yards, anywhere in there. And you do that a couple times, guess what's going to happen, right? We know this. You do one thing, team defenses will adjust. And then you're going to have opportunities to do the other things that you want to be able to do. Desmond Reed obviously is awesome. I mean, he's just been outstanding for Pitt this season. He's 9 third down conversions by himself. He's gained 20 first downs on the season. I mean, I feel like there's not much more I can say about Desmond Reed. So let's talk defense and special teams real quick, okay? Special teams, what do I even need to say? Ben Sauls is perfect. That's it. I mean, he's perfect. He's perfect. When we get into that hypothetical about, if Cal made the field goal at the end of the game, what's your confidence level about Pitt winning? I mean, part of it is that I think Eli Holstein operates well in a 2-minute drill, and I think he could have had his best drive of the game in a 2-minute drill. But the other part is that you only have to get so far because Ben Sauls is pretty much automatic at this point. So that's a reason to feel confident that, if you can get inside the 40, you've got points, and Ben Sauls is going to deliver. Defensively, though, here's the one thing. I mean, what I think about the linebackers. I think the secondary's been pretty good. The pass rush has been the question mark. But I think in the last 2 games, according to Pro Football Focus, Pitt has 119 pressures on the season. In the last 2 games, they've had 48. That's 40%. 40% of Pitt's pressures on the season have come in the last 2 games. And I don't think that's unimportant. They had 23 at Cincinnati, okay? 22 at North Carolina, 26 at Cal. So 2 out of the top 3 games in pressures this season have come in the last 2 games. I don't think it's unconnected to the fact that Sean Fitzsimmons came back. I think that's a big part of it. I think what he's done, the pressures he's created and the pressures he's opened up opportunities for other people to create has been huge. Nick James also came back. Nate Matlack is getting a lot of pressures. I think he's third in the conference or country. I forget in total pressures. He's getting back there. He's just not finishing. Last Saturday against Cal, Jimmy Scott was finishing, and ends up with 3 sacks. Not to mention the 3 sacks that the linebackers got. So my point is the pass rush is evolving. Kyle McCord is going to get rid of the ball quickly. He has to get rid of the ball quickly. He knows he has to get rid of the ball quickly, and I think he's going to come into this game believing he'll have to get rid of the ball quickly. If he tries to drop back and just sit back there, I think Pitt's going to get after him. Now, I don't expect him to drop back and try and just sit back there. I think he's going to get rid of the ball and try and give his guys a chance to break a tackle or force a missed tackle and get yards after the catch. So, put a little extra pressure on the outside linebackers, the corners, and the safeties at getting those tackles and getting those guys down on the perimeter. But if McCord tries to drop back and take a 7-step drop or something like that, and I don't even know if people still do 7-step drops, I just don't think he's going to have time for it, because I think Pitt's pass rush is improving and has taken some big steps in recent weeks. I think guys like Matlack and Jimmy Scott are settling in. Nick James is getting comfortable out there. I think Isaiah Neal's growing. Sean Fitzsimmons' return is huge. I think Nakai Johnson keeps coming along. There's a lot to like, I think, about the state of this pass rush, particularly up front, because I think it keeps getting better. And I think it keeps becoming more dangerous. And they've had their 2 best games in the last 2 weeks. They really have. I think at North Carolina, I want to say they only had 1 sack, like Kyle Lewis on the final play. But they were hitting Criswell all game long. They were hitting him a lot to the point he was holding his ribs. Oh, ow, ow. That's what you need to do every week. Sacks are ideal. Hitting the guy, forcing him off his mark, forcing his timing, forcing him to speed up his throw. Those are all wins as well. Because ideally, if you force him to speed up his throw, you're going to get a chance to get it yourself. It'll be an errant throw, and you'll have a chance for an interception. Or to make a play on the ball. So I think that's heading in the right direction, and I think that's a reason to be optimistic. And tomorrow, like I said, we're going to talk about some things about why this team might struggle in its final 6 games. But for now, I think there's some reasons to believe they can do it and keep winning. Maybe not undefeated the whole way. That loss is coming somewhere out there in the final 6 games. I think it's just a question of how many, when, who it happens against, and how it happens. But I do think this team can bounce back from the Cal game. We're talking about bouncing back from a win, which is kind of funny. I think the offense can bounce back from its worst performance of the season. I think the defense can keep building on what it's been doing in recent weeks as it keeps getting better. So those are some reasons for optimism. I don't know if I convinced you of anything at all. Probably not. Nobody really gets convinced of anything these days. But those are some reasons, I think, to feel optimistic about this team and where they are and where they're headed. Tomorrow we'll go the other way. But in the meantime, like this video and subscribe. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com so you never miss any of our Pitt video content. Morning Pitt videos every day of the week. Our weekly live show every Wednesday night. Our live post-game shows, which we will have after the Syracuse game on Thursday night. So stay up late for that one. And all those things. We do it right here. It's a lot of fun. At youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Oh, I guess we'll talk a little basketball tomorrow too, as we don't overreact to an exhibition game, which Pitt has an exhibition game tonight. So we'll try really hard not to overreact to that, and then we will totally overreact to it. So looking forward to that. All right, like and subscribe. Check out the website Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, so you don't miss any of our Pitt coverage. Our Pitt sports coverage at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. All right, thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope you have your week is off to a great start. Enjoy your Tuesday. If you see us at the basketball game tonight, say hello. And if not, we'll catch up with you tomorrow morning on the Morning Pitt right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.